Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth, and fancy seeing you here in June. Are very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Hello and welcome to Sunday's edition of the dceu Daily. If you're feeling charitable, smash that subscribe button. And if you think I'm even more pathetic than I think I am, please smash that like button. Go over to my Twitter @MoviesTVMad and give us a follow so we can continue the conversation. So today, Zack Snyder and Ben Affleck are piling on the pressure on Warner Brothers. This is a great article, surprisingly, from the Hollywood Reporter. Ben Affleck says Justice League was plagued with one problem after another. The actor explains why he got burnt out with the Caped Crusader and walked away from the franchise. Ben Affleck had a wonderful time playing Bruce Wayne and Batman in 2016, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, but not so much in its sequel, Justice League. Breaking down his career roles for GQ, in a video posted Friday, Affleck explained why he essentially got burnt out with the Caped Crusader. Justice League was unfortunately touched by some personal tragedy, a death in the director Zack Snyder's family. And like I say, sometimes things sort of work and gel, and sometimes you seem to be having one problem after another, Affleck said. Circling back, Affleck said he really loved Batman v Superman, but after Justice League he was done. I had my fill of that, he says GQ. They said, would you like to direct and star in a solo Batman movie? And I found that at some point I had lost my enthusiasm or passion for it. And I thought this should really be made by someone for whom it's their wildest dream come true. It was clear to me it was time to move on. Justice League was not received well by fans or critics. And was considered a box office bomb. And for months, Affleck's continued involvement in Batman was in question, until he confirmed in January 2019 that he was indeed retiring the role. This is interesting, 2019, nearly 2 years after the actual film Justice League was released, but we knew this. We knew this straight after Justice League. It was so obvious. Affleck currently stars in The Way Back. The Batman starring Robert Pattinson with Matt Reeves writing and directing is due in theatres June 25th, 2021. Watch Affleck's full career breakdown below. I don't think we need to do that. Right. I want to be clear here because really we're continuing on the tangent we were talking about yesterday. And I played that interview for you and I'm not going over old ground. I'm going at this a really different way. And after we finish talking about what Ben's had to say, I'm going to talk about The Dark Knight Returns and why I believe it should have been that film adapted for BVS rather than what we got. That's controversial because I love BVS. I love Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. But I really want to talk about The Dark Knight Returns, which is what graphic novel Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice is inspired from. So, again, I want to be clear that Ben Affleck is no longer Batman because of his alcoholism and his mental health problems. It was too big. Because the truth is, he did agree to do a Batman movie, to write a Batman movie, direct a Batman movie, and star in a Batman movie. That's a huge undertaking for anyone. Imagine doing that, let alone having mental health problems and being an alcoholic, which is a disease. That's something that you have to deal with 24/7, let alone taking on a project as big as the Batman. He wrote it, he was planning it, and then after Justice League, it was clear that it wasn't going to happen anymore. I believe this is a kind of a joint decision from the studio, Walter Hamada, Matt Reeves and Ben Affleck. It was clear it was time for Ben to step away for his own good. But it's very interesting what's been going on since the marketing for Ben's brand new movie, The Way Back. And I know many, many Ben Affleck fans who love him as Batman, who loves Zack's irritation of Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, really pushing this film. And that's the point. Ben's been really, really clever here. He knows there's a campaign to release the Snyder Cut. He knows by saying he loved Batman v Superman, a film that Snyder fans adore, right, and saying that he had a tough time on Justice League, a film that was plagued by studio meddling, is going to get those fans who love his Batman and Zack's irritation of the DCEU in droves to watch his movie. It's a tactic. And I say good luck to him. I'm not here to criticise Ben for doing that. But I'm just saying the real reason this is happening. But there's another reason. As I said on the top of the show, Ben Affleck and Zack Snyder, via the marketing for this film, have found a way to pile on the pressure. It's very rare for an actor to talk so candidly about a production, a played production of a film. He's saying the stuff that we've been saying for years. He enjoyed doing Batman v Superman, but he didn't really enjoy doing Justice League. He mentions Autumn's death, but that film's problems have nothing to do with Autumn's death, and I wish people would stop blaming Autumn's death for it. It's disrespectful for her memory and for Zack and Deb. That situation had nothing to do with it. Let me tell you what I said on Twitter yesterday. Batman v Superman was the theatrical cut, was a studio edited movie. David Ayer's The Suicide Squad was the theatrical cut was a studio edited movie, right? Those two films theatrical cuts were not edited and put out there by Zack Snyder and David Ayer. They were done by the studio because they were scared and worried because of the divisive nature that had been the way those films were already being received, the way Man of Steel was received. So Sugihara got involved and took over what those theatrical cuts were going to be. And then after getting Zack and Chris Terrio to write script after script, redos after redos for Justice League, they binned Zack's vision and they brought in Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon reshot nearly the whole of Justice League, but still had to put it out on the same schedule and the same release. This is what hampered Josh. If Joss Whedon made his own Justice League movie, and let's just say they binned the whole of the DCEU and Justice League was going to be the first movie, but Joss was allowed to make his own movie, right? We would have seen a very different film. A film I think everyone would have loved, and it would have been a great start. We still would have been devastated and angry how Zack had been treated, and the whole of the DCEU would have been brought crashing down, and they would have started again. They didn't do that after Justice League. It's still the DCEU. Batman v Superman and Man of Steel and Suicide Squad are very much still part of that franchise. All you have to do is see Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn to see that those films are very much a part of the DCEU. So then if we leave that, right, because it's clear that Sugihara is 100% to blame, but not just Sugihara, it's the bloggers, it's the critics, it's the response to those films. So when they went into production with Batman v Superman, I remember the San Diego Comic-Con buzz for it. Zack was there. They got an actor to take a quote from The Dark Knight Returns. It was all very, very exciting. So is Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice an adaptation of The Dark Knight Returns? No. There's certain panels from those comics that Zack does really, really well, like when Batman's standing there waiting to kick the crap out of Superman, and it's thunder and it's lightning and the rain's falling on his protective gear and you can see the blue lights flashing in his eyes. It's a beautiful panel. It's clear that Zack loves The Dark Knight Returns. But then I want to ask you something. Why not fully adapt The Dark Knight Returns? Let me ask you this, and I want to hear your opinions in the comments down below. And this is not about whether you like BVS or not. I like BVS. But I think commercially, adapting The Dark Knight Returns was a better idea. I still think implementing an older Batman in a brand new franchise is problematic. Now, we were told during the production and marketing for Man of Steel that Superman was the first hero in this era, in this franchise, in the DCEU, in the DC Cinematic Extended Universe. He was the first. It was quickly made apparent in BVS that Batman had been around for years and there was no Superman. He was the first, right? That was made apparent very, very quickly. But what you do by having an older, burnt-out Batman at the beginning of a franchise, you can have that Batman in the middle of a franchise, or as we get to kind of, I suppose, the third chapter of that franchise. That's interesting. But to actually say that the Batman in this franchise is old and burnt out creates a problem. Now, Ben Affleck is young. He was only around 40 years old at the time, 42 or whatever he was. still very young. He's still very young. He looks very youthful. So he doesn't look like, let's say, the burnt out Batman from The Dark Knight Returns in artistically in that graphic novel. Or if you watch the animated 2-part movie, Batman looks a lot more tired, a lot more older. And you can believe this is a proper burnt out Batman, right? So as much as I love BVS, starting this Batman vision in this brand new franchise with an older burnt out Batman is problematic. But if you're going to do that, adapting The Dark Knight Returns is a much better idea. So what that would do is that kind of lessens Superman's role in that film. Because basically, Batman v Superman should have been a Batman movie that cameos Henry Cavill's Superman, right? So you come in with an adaptation of The Dark Knight Returns, right? You get everything from The Dark Knight Returns, but Superman is already an agent of the government. So basically, I don't know what year or era The Dark Knight Returns, but you just adapt it into the second chapter of the DCEU, right? So in The Dark Knight Returns, Batman and Superman do fight. It's still there. But what's great about The Dark Knight Returns is you meet this brand new version of Robin, this female version. Imagine having that in Ben Affleck's Batman film. So I believe after Man of Steel, we should have had an adaptation of The Dark Knight Returns instead of BVS. I'm going to get so much hate for this, and I love BVS. I think Zack Snyder would have done a great job, and I think Chris Terrio and David Goyer would have done a great job adapting it. That's what they wanted to do anyway. So I don't understand why they went down that direction anyway, as much as I love the film. So what you get is, by the end of this film, by the end of this graphic novel, is that Batman and Superman actually have conned the government, and they set up this underground lair so they can begin a brand new Justice League. What The Dark Knight Returns graphic novel sets up is a new era for a new Justice League and a new relationship and friendship for Batman and Superman. It's really, really good. Go and read it if you haven't read it. I think people would have, and I'm talking about the mainstream audience, because The Dark Knight Returns is everything and more that Batman v Superman is. It's a dark story. It's an intense story. It's gritty. It's not a bright MCU movie, if that's what you think I'm alluding to. But what it does is, it not only sets up what BVS does in terms of a brand new relationship, future relationship for Batman and Superman, it's basically a Batman story, right? And it would have set Affleck's Batman up a hell of a lot better. And what you don't get is Superman's death. Now, let me tell you my opinion of Superman's death and BVS. I think it works. Basically, Superman's story in BVS is great. You've got most of the world doubting him, not liking him, being against him. He's got his supporters, of course. And the whole idea of killing him off is saying, you see, you never believed in him. But look, this was the hero that we needed. And now he's dead. Look at how we mistreated him. And you see everyone devastated at the end of BVS because he's dead. And that's great. My problem with Superman's death in BVS is that your next movie is a Justice League movie. How can you do the rebirth of Superman in a Justice League movie? A Justice League movie where you have to introduce the Flash, have to introduce Cyborg, have to introduce Aquaman and their relationship with Batman and a relationship with Superman, and bring Superman back. Now, we know what happens in the Justice League with the Superman rebirth story. It's non-existent. You know, Whedon crashed and burned it, not because Whedon's a hack and doesn't know what he's doing. He just didn't have the schedule and time to do it. Now, what we don't know is, does this rebirth story work in the Snyder Cut? I know you're all shouting at your monitors right now, of course it does, Zack's brilliant. I don't know, because I haven't seen it, and neither have you. I have my doubts that a Superman rebirth story in any shape or form can work in a Justice League movie when you have to introduce these characters. Now, we don't know, because the Snyder Cut is 3.5 to 4 hours long. So there's certainly a potential of being able to do an awesome Superman rebirth story. We know he's brought back from the dead by Darkseid. Darkseid controls him. So that's a great beginning. But then do we get the middle part? And then obviously he wears the black costume in the Snyder Cut. Then he rises up. Then he meets the Justice League and they join forces. It could work. But for me, if you're going to do a Death of Superman story, then after BVS, you have to do a Man of Steel sequel for the Rebirth story before you do the Justice League story. And Man of Steel 2 can't come after BVS because you really need to... I don't know why they did a Suicide Squad film so soon. That confused me because I think after BVS you should have done Wonder Woman, right? Then you do a Cyborg movie. Now everyone's saying, yeah, but you just want it like the MCU. You've got to introduce your characters first. Otherwise, you get the problems that we got in the Justice League theatrical cut. The first time we basically meet them, and I know we get a little introduction in BVS. I know we see lots of Wonder Woman in BVS. But Wonder Woman got her movie. Why couldn't the others? So basically, you introduce these heroes in a world where Superman doesn't exist anymore. Let's just say they don't do the Dark Knight Returns, right? I'm going off on a tangent here, right? So you introduce Wonder Woman in a world where Superman doesn't exist. You introduce Cyborg, Green Lantern, all of them, right? This will take years, right? Well, it wouldn't, because you could actually have, if you do things properly, you could have a year where you had Wonder Woman, Cyborg, The Flash. So it would only take a few, in terms of film and film narrative time, it would only take a couple of years, right? Then obviously you set up the stage for the shared universe. Then in a Man of Steel sequel, a couple of years later, you bring him back. You give him his rebirth story, right? And Batman can even cameo. He's had his BVS film, right? So we know him now, right? And then after that film, it can end. Basically, at the end of that film, you can leave a situation, a post-credit scene where Darkseid rises, right? Then you do your Justice League film, excuse me. and then you do your Justice League film. But in the way they did it, you have to do a Superman rebirth story in a Justice League film. And I must admit, even before I saw the Justice League theatrical movie, I was thinking, how do you pull off a Superman rebirth story being faithful to the Superman Lives, the Death of Superman graphic novel? You can't. Then after all of that, and after the shit hit the fans with Justice League, Zack told us that Doomsday in BVS isn't actually the Doomsday. He's a version of Doomsday that Lex creates. We knew Lex created him anyway. We knew he didn't come from another planet. They used that he basically used Zod to create Doomsday. And Lex put some of his own DNA in as well. So I don't have an issue with Doomsday in BVS. I think those sequences with Batman, Wonder Woman and Superman are awesome. Superman Sacrifice in BVS is wonderful and beautiful. It's beautiful storytelling. My issue is, and I'll just repeat myself before I wrap all this up, is can you do a Superman rebirth story justice in a Justice League film? I have my doubts. But until I see the Snyder Cut of Justice League, I won't know that. But I want to know what you think, and I genuinely want to know what you think. I want to know what you think. Is Ben Affleck using our love for him and his Batman and our disdain for Justice League to get us to watch his movie? I think yes. By the way, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Do you think Zack and Ben are now really tightening the screw on Warner Brothers by having Ben blatantly say that he loved BVS but didn't have a good time with Justice League? Again, I'd say yes. And do you think a Dark Knight Returns, maybe even a two-part movie, do you think that would have been a better idea than what we got in BVS? As much as I love BVS, yes, and I think the mainstream would have loved it too. And do you think after that we could have got the setup of individual movies? Again, I think yes, and I think that would have set the DCEU apart from the MCU still. That's what I truly believe. But again, I want to know how you lot feel about that. So please comment down below. Like, share and subscribe. Don't be angry about my opinions. I love Zack Snyder. I love Man of Steel and BVS. I just think in terms of making it a successful all-round franchise, if they went this direction, then we wouldn't need a course correction now. Because where we are now is We've had an Aquaman movie, which was okay. We had the Shazam movie, which was okay. We've had a Joker movie, which is really unique, but again, for me, it was okay. I enjoyed it, but it was okay. Since Justice League, because Wonder Woman was the last great DCEU movie, right? We had Batman v Superman, MOS, and Wonder Woman, great films. But since then, all the movies have just been okay. For me, they haven't been bad. They've just been okay. We need a DCEU movie now, and it has to be Wonder Woman 1984. That's more than okay. This has to reset up this franchise and say, yes, now we go. Because next year is a massive year. This really is the intensifying vision of Walter Hamada. Because in 2021, we have 3 DCEU films. Black Adam, The Batman, and James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. Those films have to be more than okay. So anyway, comment down below, like, share and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow with even more DCEU Daily. I hope you enjoyed this chat, because I most certainly did.